Hi campers, me again. Thought I'd do another one of my Mythbuster videos. There's a lot of myths and legends, and this time I want to do one about pond construction. Now, strap yourself in, because a lot of people are going to jump on this and go, "You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong." That's fine. You have your opinion. I have mine. And I'm going to talk about blockwork ponds in particular. Everybody says you have to lay your blocks flat. Well, I disagree with that, and I wholeheartedly disagree with it. The reason being, my old man was a structural engineer, and when I say he was a structural engineer, he worked on some pretty impressive projects. The bomb-proof car park under the Houses of Parliament, he designed that, and he did all the structural work on that. Imagine that one, your boss walking in one day with the blueprints for the Houses of Parliament, say, "Here you go, Stan, work out how we suspend that while we dig a bloody big hole under it." And if anyone's old enough to remember when Airy Neve was blown up by the IRA in the car park of the Houses of Parliament on the exit ramp, I can remember my dad sitting there and going, "Poor sod, but I did my job right." There you go. He was also the structural engineer that worked on that monstrosity of architectural design, Spaghetti Junction. And I can remember for many years, whenever I went over it with my dad, he'd say, "Hold your breath." And one day I said to him, "Why did you say that?" He said, "I haven't got a clue how it's still standing." He said, "I know I over-engineered it, but it's carrying probably the best part of 10 times the amount of traffic it was over-engineered to design. So when I say hold your breath," he said, "I mean it." Well, it's still standing today. And he designed that, back in the 60s or something. So he was a bit of a clever cookie, my old man. So I'm sure he knew what he was talking about when it came to building a little fish pond. And we built a couple together, through my younger years. And we built a couple with raised fronts on them. Only ever single skin block work. In fact, one of them was done in thermalites. And they were laid end on. And these weren't little ponds. My dad never built a little pond. I think the smallest pond he had was 3,000 gallons. And as I said in the previous video, some of these ponds are still standing today, and I'm 52 this year. And this particular pond we built when I was 16, and I went back there 5 years ago, and it still stood. And that was dig a hole in the ground, build a little brick wall, render it all out, and we painted it with bitumen paint at the time, which, if you listen to anyone now, would kill all your fish. Some of those fish I transferred to this pond up here. So, it didn't do them any real harm. But anyway, that's another story. Laying your blocks flat. Yes, it has a place. Yes, if money is no object for you building your pond, fantastic. If you're building your pond 3 foot deep and it's all above ground, yes, I'd probably lay the blocks flat. If you're digging your pond 2 feet into the ground and having 2 feet below ground, 2 feet above ground, there's 2 ways I would do it. I'd either lay the blocks for the first 3 or 4 courses flat, or I'd lay them on end and make sure it was very well backfilled with concrete. Now, there's a good reason for this, and it's called hydrodynamic pressure. And I've tried to explain this to people before. If you look at the way a dam is built on a reservoir, it has a very thin top and a very wide base, because as you go down through the depths of water, the hydrodynamic pressure increases, and about 2 meters, you're exerting something like, I think it's something like 16 or 18 psi. That's pounds per square inch. That's less than the pressure of your car tyre, probably half the pressure of the average car tyre. That's the sort of dynamic pressure you're pushing on a still body of water at 2 meters deep. So it presses out in all directions at about 16 psi. Now a 7 Newton meter concrete block, if you were to exert it to 16 pounds per square inch of force, it wouldn't go very far. So everyone will be jumping up and down saying, you don't know what you're talking about, that can't possibly work. So I'm going to refer you to another koi tuber, Koi Pond Lifestyle, the King of Fock. Hi Andy. When he built his pond, he consulted a structural engineer at work. And he said, what's all this about laying blocks flat? And the guy said, well, I'd probably do, I think it was the bottom third flat, and then just build them as a normal wall on top of that. And I wholeheartedly agree with that, because the pressure that water exerts goes down and out. It doesn't go linear out. So it presses down and outward. So the deeper you go, there's more downward pressure, which creates more of an outward pressure. And as I said before, at 2 meters deep, that pressure is minimal. Yes, you might have 10 tons of water in there. You might have 20 tons of water. You might have 30 tons of water in there. But the dynamic pressure is the same. It's 16 pounds per square inch at about 1.5, 2 meters. I can't remember the exact figures. You can go online, you can calculate dynamic pressure, and it'll give you an exact figure. You can go to the Royal Academy of Structural Engineers, and they've got all the formulas to work it out if you're mathematically minded. They will tell you exactly what pressure goes where. But hydrostatic pressure is a constant, and it is constantly that at that level, that at that level, that at that level. It doesn't matter how big the body of water is, it doesn't matter how many tons of water you've got there, the pressure exertion is the same. Now, on my pond, which is a totally in-ground pond, when I put it all in, we dug it out really quickly. We had to dig a hole quickly and get a liner in it. And it's been like that ever since. Because I had to home the fish pretty quickly, because we transported them from Northamptonshire up to here, and there was no pond here at all. So they were in a paddling pool, and a relatively small paddling pool, and some rather large fish. So I just went, right, get an excavator in, dig a hole, we'll chuck a liner in, job done. But when we'd done that, we found there was a low spot on the pond, and it was about 6 inches lower than the rest. So I thought, well, I'll temporarily chuck a few bricks in the side, block paving bricks, and I'll just lay them on top of each other. I'll lay 2 that way, 2 that way, and just cross them over each other. And I'll just put the liner over the top, and I'll sort it out another day. It probably won't last very long. It'll probably shift out of the way. Now, my pond, as we well know, is a little puddle. It's 25,000 litres. I have 10-foot stretch of the sidewall that the liner is over the top of loose laid bricks. They're not even cemented together. They're just literally laid in there. That's been like that for 4 years. Those bricks haven't moved. That's in the first 8 inches of water, because all the pressure is going down. It's not just going straight out. So the pressure on those bricks is nothing. Now, if you've got your pond in the ground and you've got a brick wall laid that way instead of that way, yeah, and you've got it backfilled properly, that wall can't move out. I really need to get my memory card in the phone. It keeps running out of room now. Too many videos. I need to stop making videos and waffling on. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, those bricks haven't moved in 4 years. Apart from when the Rottweilers decide to tread on them and mess about trying to drink out of the pond. So, yeah, if you got your foot on 2 foot down the ground and you build your block work that way instead of that way, as long as you backfill it properly, and by backfill it I mean either properly backfill it and properly tamper it all down, or pour some concrete around the back of it, it's not going to move anywhere. You don't dig a liner pond and put a liner in and then find that the liner's moved outwards. The soil doesn't compress anymore. The pond doesn't suddenly start enlarging. So why would it be any different if you put brickwork and then backfill it with concrete? There isn't. And the majority of the pressure goes down that way. The main problem I've seen with people doing blockwork ponds is that they're mixing their mortar far too dry. And you can tell that because when they're tapping their blocks down, and I've seen a few YouTube videos, when they're tapping their blocks down, it's not squidging out, it's they're having to virtually hammer the blocks down. Instead of a couple of little taps, they're having to hammer them down. There's no movement in the block. The mortar isn't compressing into the fabric of the block. And if your mortar doesn't compress into the fabric of the block and it's not wet enough, and bear in mind I'm not a builder, I'm not a bricklayer, but this is my understanding of it, you won't get a good bond. So if you're using a very dry mix, or quite a dry mix, you won't get a very good bond. On the converse side, if you use too wet a mix, it will just pour out and won't hold anything together. The block will sit on it and the block will go down and just squidge everything out. So it's a happy medium, and this is why bricklayers are bricklayers. They know what mix to use, what strength mix to use, how wet to mix it up, all the rest of it. If you're not a bricklayer, you go on what you see on YouTube a lot of the time. But I've noticed that a lot of people seem to be using a very dry mix, and I'm sure someone who's a builder like Surrey Coy or someone will pull me up and say, oh, it's not about the mix or whatever, but that's the understanding I have of it. Certainly from a structural integrity point of view. And again, I'm sure that some builders will say, you're talking rubbish. It's not me actually talking per se, it's my dad talking from his many years of structural engineering. And there's actually living proof that what I'm saying does work. If you go and look at, as I say, Andy, Koi Pond Lifestyle, his is built with the bottom few layers. I can't remember how high up he went. I think it was about a third with the blocks laying on the side. And then the rest of the pond was stood up. And as I say, he spoke to a structural engineer, and the structural engineer basically agreed with what my dad said. He said there's actually no real point in doing it. And when you look at the way a dam is constructed, you can see exactly that. The top of a dam is very thin, the bottom of a dam is very fat. The reason for that is all the pressure goes down and out the bottom. There's very little pressure at the top of a dam. And it doesn't matter if that dam is 1 billion gallons or 1 million gallons. The dynamic pressure is the same at different depths, as far as I'm aware, because it's a static thing. So that's my thoughts on that little mythbuster. Now, if money is no object and you want to do it belt and braces, fill your boots. But I'll hazard a guess that laying blocks properly that way is far stronger than doing a sleeper that way. And yet you see many sleeper ponds built that way. And nobody thinks twice about that. I think there's a bit of snobbery value to it myself. As I say, I've seen ponds built for a long time. If a piece of 35mm glass will hold back 5,000–10,000 gallons of water, I'm sure some good quality concrete blocks with a good mix will do the same. That's just my little thoughts and ramblings. As I say, there's actually someone out there that has a pond built that way. Go and have a look at his pond build. Koi Pond Lifestyle Andy. He will confirm that that's what it is. If you look through his videos, he discusses it a few times in there. So if you're on a budget, and this is where I aim my advice a lot of the time, is people on budgets. If you're on a budget, don't buy 2.5 times the blocks you need to, basically. I think it works out that if you lay them flat like that, you need 2.4 times as many blocks as laying them like that. So that's £1.50 as opposed to £3–4 quid. If blocks are still £1.50 each. Depends where you get them from. I think Travis Perkins are about £1.50 each. They may have gone up since I last bought blocks, which was, I bought about 50 last year for a little project. When you start running that into hundreds of blocks, you can save yourself a pretty penny. You can probably save yourself a UV or a decent pump or something like that. If you're going to liner it, it'd be a good chunk off your liner. But if you know a structural engineer, ask them. Yeah. Because, as I say, I know 2 structural engineers that have been consulted on it now, and they both said the same thing. There's absolutely no need to do it, apart from way over engineering it. So, there you go. Myth busted, as the old man used to say. Well, this is actually his mug. Yeah. He was the original Mr. Grumpy. As they used to say, keep it simple, stupid. Good night, folks.